There we go.
All right, we good? I'm good. Okay. Seems like we ought to record that.
Good?
Yep.
All
we're
right.
rolling.
Okay. All right, guess we're ready to get started.
Good.
So if we could start first by just having you say your name and spell it for us.
My name is Ludwig Bruggemann. Ludwig, Ludwig, Bruggemann, Bruggemann.
Great, thank you very much. And my name's Bob Bauman. Today's date is September 8th of 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And we're conducting this interview in Yakima, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So Mr. Bruggemann, I wonder if we could start by having you tell us a little bit about your family and your parents, and if you know why they moved to the area and when they did that.
Okay. In my father's generation, there were 3 brothers, and my father wanted to become a farmer, and my family had connections to people in Seattle that had access to farms, real estate, evidently real estate people. And my father migrated to America in about 1925-26, and worked his way up the west coast from California on up. And in the between time, his family, or these real estate people, had found a farm in the state of Washington that was installed. It was built. Everything was there. The person owning it wanted to sell, and my father was able to purchase this 400-acre farm on the Columbia River. Being very important, having water. This is almost a desert area, and he had a big pump station on the Columbia River, water pump station.
So that was in place already.
That was in place, and he took it over and got it going, working right, and. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea how much your father paid for that?
No idea at all. No.
And so, what sort of crops were grown on the farm?
My father had what, Paula?
I don't know if it was soft fruit or.
No, it was soft fruit, as I remember.
Apricots,
Cherries. Wasn't it cherries, peaches, apricots, pears, maybe.
but no apples.
No apples, no. And he later wanted to go into grapes.
Grapes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which
So
he
that's a plan for
Yeah,
down the road.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And your mother, was your father married at the time that he purchased the property, or how?
My father was married, I think, at the time he purchased the property, but he got a divorce, and then he met my mother, which was whose relatives were running the ferry
Okay.
at Priest Rapids, and that's how my mother met him, and found him evidently a very attractive man.
And what was your mother's name?
Mary.
And so, what memories do you have? I know you were very young when your family left. What memories do you have of the place at all?
Almost none. It was a big place. We had animals, and on about my 5th birthday, I got kicked over by a goat. I was trying to pet one of her children, and she didn't like that. And I did experience. I sort of have in my memory the 2 jeeps driving in with the orders, the government orders. You have 2 months to pack your things and get out of here, which is a real blow for a farmer.
Right.
Because you see, my father had his first crop on the trees. Because later, in the dealings, the court dealings he had, they asked him, "Show us your profits." And he said, "Look, I built up that farm, and I had my first crop on the trees, and your 2 jeeps drove in, military jeeps."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So your father then took the government to court at some point? Is that what you're saying?
Pardon?
Your father, did he go to court then? With the
Later, I don't know when we moved then to Yakima afterwards. My father thought that he had put his youth energy into that farm, and he still wanted to remain a farmer, but he wanted something smaller, and which he could get here on the outskirts of Yakima. And he went to court. I think that was a normal procedure. You had to go to court, I think, to find out what the proceeds would be, what the government would pay for the property, and you're saying it's worth a lot of money, and you have to prove that's worth a lot of money.
Right.
The land, the crops, and so on. And well, the government has to show us your profits. And he didn't have any profits to show, so he got much less than he had hoped he would. Mm-hmm.
Did your father or mother, do you remember them talking about this much at the time, or later, even when you were older, talking about having to move in 1943?
No, not really. You see, my father was a real dedicated farmer, and he took over 12 acres in here in Yakima, with cherries, Bing cherries, that were sold in New York, really good fruit, peaches and apricots, and that subject was sort of shoved to the back. I don't really remember any discussions. I do know, though, that they were disappointed on the outcome,
Sure.
Financial outcome.
I wonder if you have any other memories of other people who on farms, neighboring farms, or other people that you knew in the area,
Well, Marguerite, Gary and Marguerite Wills, they had the contact. Then they were out there also, weren't they?
Yeah, that's where they met him.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. and Mrs. Wills, they were also farmers, and also came then to Yakima. There were 2 big cities that you would go to, either Sunnyside or Yakima. At that time.
Right. So even when you were living on your farm, if you needed to go to the city to buy things, whatever, you go to.
Yeah, either we go to Sunnyside or to Yakima, and the Yakima tour was about an hour's drive at that time.
So you were about 5 years old, is that right?
I was my birthday's in the summer, and those jeeps drove in the summer, so I was almost on my 5th birthday, right, when that happened.
So you had not yet started school, is that?
No. I had no kindergarten. They didn't have kindergarten then. I started in Castleville School, didn't I? I started there, yeah, in the 1st grade. and which I just loved. A very good school, Castlevale.
Now we were talking earlier that you and your sister had both a chance to go back on site a couple of years ago, Gary
Yeah.
Peterson,
Right.
had you been back before then at all, actually?
No, we would, you know where the Vantage Bridge is. Okay, I would take trips on my trips here to the States. I would take trips with my parents to the Vantage Bridge, and there's a little stop there, a little rest area there, and we would look over the fence to the old house. We thought it was the old house until it was well, the house was there for a while anyway, until they tore it down. But that's all. That's only.
So that time with Gary was the only first time you'd actually been out.
Yes, in the area.
Right.
Yes.
What I was kind of curious. Did it bring back any memories for you, or what sorts of things?
Not really. Not really. I don't remember the house at all. For example, I don't remember. I know my memory set in when I came to Yakima.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a well. Wait. One thing. My mother was always very very much loaded with work and cooking and even washing for help. Washing clothes and so on for help. It was a real burden for her. I don't think when she married my father, she didn't realize what type of work is involved in a big ranch. Because if you have 400 acres, you need a lot of help. Cooking and so on. Housing these people to a certain degree.
Do you remember any of the other buildings that were there? Or your sister mentioned the cookhouse, I think.
The cookhouse is still there.
The building that's still there, right?
Yeah. Not really. There must have been some big barns and so on there, but I just don't remember that at all. Remember having a dog.
Oh.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the size of the property, and obviously your father must have hired a number of workers.
Oh yes.
Do you remember workers being around, or any?
Not really. The only thing I really remember was loading. My father would take the fruit to the rail, to the what was it? What was the rail track station? Anyway, there's a railroad station there, and one day. No, Priest Rapids or something. Anyway, one day a big train came in, and the engineer, the driver of the train, saw me standing down there with my father, and he asked me, "Do you want a Coke?" I must have said yes, so he threw me down a Coke. that which really impressed me at that time.
Yeah. That is something you would remember.
Yeah. But that was also something that was very important, getting the fruit out of there, getting it onto the train, make sure things are running, that make sure the fruit doesn't get to the right storage and so on. The cool house.
What was the weather like? Do you remember winters or summers at all?
No, I don't remember winters at all, but the summers were warm. Very, very warm.
And you mentioned having a dog.
Yeah.
You know, young people today are used to a lot of things to keep themselves entertained.
Yeah.
And so they would probably want to know, well, what did, you know, as a young child, what did you do on a farm? Did you have, you probably were too little to have any chores or anything like that.
No, no. Well, my mother would probably ask me to set the table or something, maybe, or some. But no, I was really too young. I think also that my sister and I were quite a burden for my mother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because she has so much work to do, and she had to entertain us also. You know, and by the way, your comment is interesting to me, because young people today tend to say to their mother, "I'm bored. Fix that, please." I never said that once in my life. I took life as it came, and after that, and that's one of the reasons I like school so much, because school was for me then exciting.
Mm-hmm. Right. So then in 1943, when you had to move,
Yeah.
Your family had to move. You said you moved essentially to Yakima then.
We moved here into Yakima, into a rented house, while my father looked for a farm out here on Inglewood Avenue then.
He had Canfield.
Hmm?
He bought the Canfield house.
The Canfield house,
He
okay,
was
yeah.
a representative for the state or something.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
He never liked that house.
Mm.
So, why do you, you know, I've interviewed a number of people, and as I explained to you earlier, both people who lived in the area before 1943, and then people came to work at Hanford during the war. Why do you think it'd be important for people to learn about these communities, these farmers and families that were there before World War II?
Well, one reason, the hardships that people were willing to go through. If at that time I would have been, say, 25, and I got a letter or something saying you can earn a lot of money if you go to Hanford. Well, I could have probably earned a lot of money, but it would have been a lot of hardship also. And I think that's much different than today. People are not willing to go through a hardship like that. Building up a community in that short a time, and working hard, maybe more than 8 hours a day, to get that project working. Yeah. That atomic bomb was a very important thing, you know. It's one of the factors of winning the war.
Right. Are there any other memories, either of the farm itself, the ranch, of the area that you still remember or think about, or sort of stand out?
No, I just remember also a hardship. Now look, if my wife wants some butter, like this morning she told me I would need butter. So what I do, I get in my car, I drive a mile down to Freddie Meyer, have a butter within 5 minutes, and I'm back again. If something happened on the ranch, my dad or my mother had to made an hour trip driving on roads that weren't nearly as nice as they are today.
Right.
So this hardship, I noticed that was always a big thing. I'm sure my father had many flat tires coming to Yakima.
Mm-hmm. Right. So things we take for granted today.
Yeah.
A lot more work.
Yeah, and the thing, life is so easy now. You know, let's take let's take Freddie Meyer for an example. I was in that store this morning. It's huge and has everything that I can think of.
Mhm.
You know, if my mother at the ranch wanted some little thing, she had to go to Yakima to get it. There was no other way to purchasing that. Meaning a trip, a dirty trip to Yakima, 1 hour both ways.
White Bluffs, no.
Hmm?
White Bluffs, some of these little towns had a few, a grocery store or something.
Yes, but
But I think they went to Sunnyside quite a bit.
yeah, yeah.
So I guess one more question, and unless you have something else you want to talk about, but I guess what would you like people to know or understand or remember about your family and the ranch? It's you know, we were talking earlier. It's one of the cookhouse that's there is one of the few buildings from pre-43 that's still standing that people can maybe
Look at,
actually
yeah.
see a concrete reminder that there were families there.
Yes.
So I guess is there anything that you and either of you, I guess, would like people to understand if they get a chance to see that building, know about the family that lived there?
Well, I don't know the German word Pioniergeist, the willingness to pioneer something. That is the important thing, and then my mother going into this Pioniergeist type of thing, and finding it a terrible burden. Huh? I mean, things don't always work out perfectly, you know, and then something like this war situation coming up, and just completely changing your life. Now, for me, it was probably a good change. I think I had an advantage, getting into right away at the age of 6, going to a nice school here in Yakima, which was probably much better than I would have had out at the ranch.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I also at that time, as opposed to today, I had very good teachers, 50-year-old women that knew what they were doing. Hmm?
I was just thinking as you were speaking, thinking about your parents in some ways came from very different places, right?
Yeah, sure.
So was your father bilingual? Did he speak English and German? Or was
Yes, German and English, both. Yes, sure.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
And did he speak both at home there? I mean, did you
No,
learn
we
German?
didn't. At home we spoke English.
Okay.
My mother's
Right, sure.
language.
Hmm.
Mm.
Did you learn any German from your father growing up?
No, I didn't. I had to learn German the hard way. Yeah.
Well, I guess then I'll just leave it. I asked questions I wanted to ask. Is there anything that you want to add, or some memory that we haven't talked about
Do you
yet?
remember the
of your
hermit?
parents?
The hermit?
Yeah.
No,
On the way to Sunnyside.
No.
You always stopped and talked to him, and
no,
he just was thrilled to death talking to my mom.
no,
My mom.
no, don't know that.
That's right. You had mentioned him when
Yeah,
we talked.
that was really.
I only remember the
I
ha-
like my
you-
mom so much.
do you remember the halfway house?
Well, the name, yeah.
The halfway house was an abandoned house that was sort of halfway to Yakima.
And so that's why it's the halfway.
Yeah, halfway house. You know, they never tore it down; they just let it,
Oh,
and it doesn't. It doesn't exist anymore.
right.
Mm.
But at the
But,
time, it was.
yeah, but that's also an indication that it was quite a trip to Yakima. You know,
Yes, it was quite a trip, and I had to go to the bathroom all the time. I'm not once in a while. I just go in the pickup and go through the boards.
and,
And I guess you mentioned the Wills family.
the Wills, yes.
Any other family names that you remember, or
What did you say,
individuals
Debbie?
that from the area?
No, no, I don't. No, that.
Gil Hooley, yeah, Gil Hooley.
Oh, Gil Hooley.
And Fry. Fry just died here not too long ago. a couple
Okay.
days
So I
ago.
think you had mentioned
Yeah.
Gil Hooley name when I
Yeah. Okay.
was here.
Y-E, I think it is.
One other question I was going to ask you: how did you have a radio, or did you get a newspaper at all? I mean, I was curious, like how you learned about your family, if you know.
Well, yes, we surely had a radio, but the radio came important here in Yakima. I thought, because my dad would sit in the evenings at the not at the TV, but he'd sit at the radio, and he would get the two children, say, come on, listen in, and there were also some plays or something on the radio that were
The
entertaining.
Cinnamon Bear every
Pardon?
evening. The Cinnamon Bear every evening.
Okay.
We didn't even have TV till like 51.
Right.
No, TV was much later. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I was wondering, like, if radio or newspaper, if you.
No. We listened. Well, we had the Yakima Herald newspaper every day, but we listened a lot in the evenings to radio. Just like people sit in front of the TV nowadays,
Right.
Mm.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
I appreciate.
I-
that
No,
you
I
taking it.
wish I knew more, but it's something. It's to us in one way. It's amazing to me too that that I have such a fragile memory of the whole thing, but things changed then when we came to Yakima.
Sure.
Mm.
I don't know that I remember much before I turned 5, so of
Yeah.
my childhood.
Yeah. That's.
But,
Mm.
but again, I appreciate you taking the time out of your trip here to the States.
Sure. Well, no, I'm very willing to do this. It's important to show a good picture of history, the way it was, and especially this project. I think this project is one of the any place in the world. It is surely a huge project that worked. And worked under pressure too.
Right.
A lot of pressure.
Right.
Mm.
And so when we were talking earlier, we wanted to preserve as many of the memories, both of the people who came to work
Yeah.
on the project and also the people who were here
Yeah.
before that. Make sure people understand there were farmers and
Yeah.
towns there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
before. Well, again, thank you very much.
Hmm?
We really appreciate it.
Okay.